If you stand up on a moving train and just stare down at your own shaking feet, your brain will literally trigger a loss of balance.
Oh, yeah. Your vestibular system just completely panics
Right. It gets so confused by the conflicting signals of the floor vibrating and the walls rushing past, and you will inevitably fall over.
because you don't have a horizon line.
Exactly. The only way to walk down the aisle of a moving train without stumbling is to look out the window and fix your eyes on an unmoving point on the horizon.
Your brain just fundamentally needs a stationary anchor to process the chaos happening to your physical body.
It really does. And today we are taking a deep dive into an ancient text that uses this exact neurological loophole, honestly, to explain how to survive the overwhelming instability of modern life.
Yeah, we are diving into Isaiah chapter 26 today, and we're pairing it with a modern application guide to really look at the mechanics of true stability.
And just to be clear, this isn't about finding, a temporary escape from a chaotic news cycle or a stressful schedule.
No, not at all. We are examining a very specific blueprint for how to stay grounded when the environment you are standing in is completely unstable.
Right. We are going to dissect the vivid imagery of this ancient manuscript and then really translate its core psychological and spiritual mechanisms into everyday application for you.
Our mission is to figure out how this ancient wisdom can actually strengthen your trust and relationship with God today.
So to do that, we kind of have to start by immersing ourselves in the raw cinematic contrasts of the source text.
Yeah, the imagery is incredible.
It really is. I mean, Isaiah 26 opens with a song sung in the land of Judah, and it sets up this tale of two entirely different cities. First, you have this strong city.
Right, the strong city.
And the text says, salvation will God appoint for walls and bulwarks. Which is fascinating because, usually an ancient city's strength was measured by the thickness of its stone walls.
Exactly, the physical barriers.
Right. But here, the defense isn't a physical barrier at all. It's an action, a spiritual reality.
Yeah, the author is really subverting the entire concept of security there. I mean, by making salvation the walls, the text is arguing that true defense is an internal state of divine rescue.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not some external fortress you can just build with human hands. And that invisible fortress is immediately contrasted with the lofty city, the city that dwells on high.
A lofty city, yeah.
Right, which represents a civilization, or really just an individual mindset that's built purely on elevation, pride, and self-reliance.
Just totally arrogant.
Completely. And the text says God brings this lofty city down, laying it low, even to the ground, bringing it right to the dust.
And the imagery there is just brutal. The text says the foot shall tread it down, even the feet of the poor and the steps of the needy.
Yeah, it's quite the reversal.
It's like this arrogant, glittering skyscraper crumbles, and the very people it used to cast shadows over are now literally walking on its remains.
And the use of the word dust there is a very deliberate ancient motif.
Well,
Yeah, in ancient Near Eastern literature, dust is the ultimate symbol of mortality and nothingness. It's a callback to the idea of returning to dust.
oh, I see.
So the text is pointing out that a life built on arrogance isn't just misguided, it is fundamentally fragile.
Right.
When the lofty city is brought to the dust, it is simply being reduced to the reality of what it always was.
Yeah.
Powerless and temporary.
That makes so much sense. But then, after this triumphant destruction of arrogance, the text takes a really jarring turn.
It really does. It shifts tones entirely.
Yeah, the narrator shifts to this deeply visceral struggle. They talk about desiring God in the night, and they compare their situation to a woman with child in severe pain, crying out in her pain.
The very intense metaphor.
Very intense. And then we hit this line. We have, as it were, brought forth wind. We have not wrought any deliverance in the earth.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Let's unpack this because it feels incredibly out of place. I mean, why does a triumphant song about a strong city suddenly pivot to an agonizing image of a woman enduring the torture of labor only to produce empty air?
It's a horrific metaphor of absolute futility.
It is. It's like putting in all this agonizing effort and getting zero results.
Well, it is supposed to make you uncomfortable. The author is describing the sheer exhaustion of human striving when it is disconnected from divine alignment.
Okay, disconnected from divine alignment.
Right. Think about the physiological toll of childbirth. The immense pain, the biological resources expended, hitting the absolute threshold of human endurance.
Yeah, it's massive.
Now imagine enduring all of that trauma, all of that pressure, and delivering nothing but wind. The problem isn't fixed. there is no life.
Wow.
This perfectly captures the modern condition of burnout, I think.
Oh, totally. We put in massive effort. We work the 80-hour weeks.
Yeah.
We obsess over every detail trying to manufacture our own security.
Mhm.
But because we are relying solely on our own finite strength, we produce no actual deliverance.
Exactly. We just exhaust ourselves.
We bring forth wind. We are running on a treadmill at maximum speed, feeling the pain in our lungs, but stepping off in the exact same location.
It's devastating. But thankfully, the text doesn't let us sit in that despair.
No, it doesn't. It pivots again to this startling promise. It says, "Thy dead men shall live. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in dust, for thy dew is as the dew of herbs."
That shift from the dust of destruction to the dust of resurrection is brilliant.
It really is. After all that agonizing human failure, there is this sudden, quiet promise of resurrection springing up from barren ground.
And then it gives an instruction for the people to hide in their chambers for a little moment until the indignation passes.
Right.
Notice the contrast in the mechanisms there. Human effort was loud, painful, and produced absolutely nothing.
Just wind.
Right. But the divine effort is compared to the dew of herbs. Dew forms in absolute silence.
That's true. It just happens overnight.
It requires zero human intervention. It's a quiet, life-giving power that revives the barren ground.
Wow.
But to experience it, the text gives a completely counterintuitive command. Go to your chambers, hide, and wait. Stop trying to give birth to wind and let the divine process work.
Which naturally brings us to the core mechanism of how we actually do that. I mean, if our own frantic efforts are fruitless, where does true stability actually come from?
Well, the application guide zeroes in on verse 3, which provides a very specific psychological formula for peace.
It says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee."
Right. We talked about the moving train earlier. The guide argues that you don't feel unstable because your life is chaotic.
Okay, then why?
You feel unstable because your thinking is uncontrolled. Stability starts internally.
Okay, so going back to the moving train, it's like if you stare at your feet, you're going to fall over. You have to fix your eyes on a stationary point on the horizon.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for us? How does intentionally focusing on God instead of our chaotic environment actually rewire our internal reality?
It's about the mechanics of focus.
Mm.
The Hebrew word translated as stayed implies a deliberate leaning, like resting your full weight upon something.
Resting your weight. Got it.
Because the human brain is essentially a threat detection machine. If you do not consciously choose where to anchor your focus, your amygdala will just hijack your attention.
And it darts frantically from one potential threat to another.
Exactly. A plummeting stock market, a cryptic email from a boss, an alarming news headline. Your nervous system mirrors whatever you are focusing on.
Right.
If your focus is chaotic, your internal state will be chaotic.
I think of it kind of like a gyroscope inside a ship.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, the ocean is violently tossing the ship back and forth, but the gyroscope has a spinning rotor at its center that maintains its upright orientation regardless of how the container is tilted.
Right, it resists the motion.
Exactly. It uses the physics of angular momentum to resist the chaos outside. So verse 3 is essentially saying that focusing your mind on the Creator is the spiritual equivalent of spinning up that inner rotor.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. A gyroscope doesn't calm the ocean.
No, it doesn't.
It stabilizes the vessel. When your mind is stayed on a God who possesses, as verse 4 calls it, everlasting strength, you are removing the massive burden of outcome from your own shoulders.
You stop trying to control the uncontrollable.
Precisely. You acknowledge the storm outside, but your internal processing is tethered to an immovable foundation.
So the anxiety drops not because the threat disappeared, but because you realize your structural integrity isn't dependent on your own temporary strength.
Exactly. But if anchoring our focus to God creates that strong city stability, we have to look at what happens when a person anchors entirely to themselves.
Right, which brings us back to the application guide's breakdown of the lofty city and how arrogance actively creates imbalance.
Yes. The guide points out a fascinating psychological insight from verse 10.
The text says, "Let favor be showed to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness? In the land of uprightness will he deal unjustly."
Such an interesting verse.
It is, and here's where it gets really interesting. I want to posit a theory here. We usually operate under the assumption that cutting someone a break will inspire them to change.
Sure, we think they just need a little help.
Right. If someone is struggling or acting out, we think a lucky break or a favorable environment will soften them and help them grow.
But this text argues the exact opposite.
Yes. It argues that favorable conditions actually stunt growth and entrench bad behavior. So why does comfort act as an anesthetic to growth?
It's because of the feedback loop of arrogance. When an arrogant person, someone who views themselves as their own lofty city, experiences a season of favor, they don't interpret it as grace.
What do they interpret it as?
Validation. Their mind says, see, my methods are working. My self-reliance is successful.
Oh, wow.
There is zero friction, forcing them to reevaluate their foundation. The application guide highlights this really hard. Truth awareness doesn't guarantee growth.
That is a hard truth. You can see what's wrong and still not fix it.
Exactly. A person can intellectually know they have a character flaw, but if their environment is comfortable, there is no biological or spiritual imperative to do the agonizing work of changing it.
Favor just reinforces their false sense of security. They get the dopamine hit of success without having to build the deep neural pathways of actual resilience or righteousness.
Which is why the guide points out that pressure, rather than favor, is the required audit of your true foundation.
Pressure exposes what's real.
Right. Hard situations are not necessarily punishments. They are critical feedback mechanisms.
Because when a Category 5 storm hits, you find out immediately if your walls are made of salvation or if they are just a lofty, fragile facade.
Exactly. Pressure exposes the structural weaknesses that favor allowed you to ignore.
So if pressure acts as the audit that reveals our foundation is cracking, the immediate question is how to go about rebuilding it properly.
And the text suggests the answer is not a quick fix.
No, it definitely isn't. There is a relentless theme of waiting woven throughout this entire chapter.
Waiting for God's judgments, seeking Him in the night, and that command to hide for a little moment.
And the modern application guide connects this ancient idea of waiting to the reality of gradual progress, and really the sheer power of discipline over motivation.
Because motivation is just an emotional state.
Right. It spikes when you hear a good speech or read an inspiring quote.
But it evaporates the moment you hit resistance. Discipline is a structural choice.
It really is.
It is the commitment to keep your mind stayed on truth, even when your emotions are screaming in a panic.
Yeah.
Rebuilding a shattered foundation requires the discipline of consistency during seasons where you see absolutely no tangible results.
The guide uses the analogy of planting a garden. You know, you can have the best intentions in the world, but intentions don't grow crops.
No, they don't.
You have to water the dirt every single day, and for weeks you are just staring at wet dirt.
Nothing happens.
Exactly. You see zero evidence that anything is happening. But it's not just wet dirt. Beneath the surface, seeds are germinating, root systems are expanding, and a foundation is being built that you cannot observe.
Right.
If you demand immediate visible progress and quit watering the dirt on day 14, you guarantee you will never see the harvest on day 60.
That's the trap.
So how do we stay consistent during those slow seasons when God's protection or our own progress is completely invisible?
You apply it by changing your definition of action. We tend to view waiting as a passive, helpless state.
Like we're just sitting around.
Right. But in the context of this chapter, waiting is an intensely active discipline.
Okay, active how?
It is the daily, rigorous mental exercise of refusing to rely on your own strengths and deliberately redirecting your focus back to the everlasting strength of the Creator.
Ah, I see.
We can look back at the dew of herbs metaphor. Dew is a thermodynamic process. It requires the ambient temperature to drop to a specific threshold, the dew point, where the air can no longer hold its water vapor.
That makes sense.
That water condenses silently in the coldest, darkest hours of the night. You can't force it to happen faster. You simply have to wait out the dark, trusting the atmospheric laws.
So God's deliverance often operates on the same principle.
Exactly.
That reframes the entire concept of the night mentioned in the text. It's not just a time of suffering. It's the environmental prerequisite for the life-giving moisture to form.
Is entirely necessary.
So all of these elements, controlling our focus to build the inner gyroscope, recognizing the illusion of arrogance, embracing the friction of pressure, and practicing the active discipline of waiting in the dark.
They all funnel into the central focus of this deep dive.
Exactly. Transforming how we relate to the divine. How does this information strengthen our trust and relationship with God?
Well, this is where the theology moves from theoretical to highly operational. In verse 13, the text makes a profound confession.
Okay.
O Lord our God, other lords besides thee have had dominion over us, but by thee only will we make mention of thy name.
And then it delivers a pretty brutal assessment of those competing allegiances in verse 14.
It does. It says, "They are dead, they shall not live, they are deceased, they shall not rise."
Because those other lords are the things we run to for stability when the train starts shaking.
Absolutely.
Today, those lords look like our bank accounts, our career titles, our social validation, or just our obsessive need to control our schedules.
Right.
The text is calling them deceased because they possess zero capacity to provide everlasting stability. I mean, the moment the market crashes or the job is lost, the lord you relied on is dead.
Recognizing the mortality of these temporary solutions is the turning point in the relationship.
Yeah.
We often treat our spirituality like a transactional exchange. We use God as a quick fix mechanism. We cry out when the pressure is unbearable, seeking a momentary hit of relief, and the second the crisis passes, we go right back to pledging allegiance to our own self-reliance.
We go back to being the lofty city. It's like we often treat God like a quick fix app on our phones, wanting temporary relief from our chaos. We just open it, click a button to silence the anxiety, and then close it so we can get back to running our own lives.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But this text is offering an operating system upgrade steady stability. So could you summarize how shifting from seeking relief to building trust completely changes the way we approach God daily?
It changes your baseline nervous system response.
Mm.
A relationship built on transactional relief is always anxious because you are constantly waiting for the next crisis so you can ask for the next bailout.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But a relationship built on steady, disciplined trust means your mind is permanently stayed on the unshifting nature of God.
Wow.
You no longer panic when the environment gets chaotic because you have already accepted that your own efforts to control the world will only ever bring forth wind.
Right.
True peace is the byproduct of finally resigning as the architect of your own universe and taking up residence in the strong city that someone else built.
It is the ultimate release of the burden of outcome.
It really is.
We've traced a massive psychological and spiritual arc today. We started with the jarring contrast of the strong city with walls of salvation versus the lofty city crumbling to dust.
We saw the agonizing futility of human striving that only produces wind, and how the ancient text counters that exhaustion with the active discipline of a stayed mind.
Yeah. And we examine how favor can actually paralyze growth by reinforcing arrogance, while pressure provides the vital friction needed to expose the cracks in our foundation.
And we broke down the necessity of trusting the unseen during the slow seasons.
Refusing to demand immediate, visible progress.
Right. And choosing instead to actively wait in the dark, knowing that the dew is forming precisely because the temperature has dropped.
Ultimately, it all comes down to abandoning the dead lords of our own temporary solutions and anchoring the gyroscope of our mind to everlasting strength.
It is the shift from frantically seeking a momentary break from the wind to realizing you are already standing inside an impenetrable fortress.
Think about that thermodynamic process of the dew forming. Consider this dew only materializes in the coldest, darkest part of the night when the air can absolutely no longer hold its moisture.
The breaking point.
Right. What if your moments of absolute lowest capacity, when you feel entirely drained of warmth and strength, aren't the end of your story?
Yeah.
What if that extreme drop in temperature is the exact environmental prerequisite required for your dew of herbs to finally form? Think about that the next time the storm hits and the air goes cold. How will you apply this information in your life?